Today's story is about a strange and bizarre theft, where just one thief used a screwdriver, antenna, and a long jacket to carry out 8 of the biggest art thefts in Europe. The most shocking part was that this series of thefts continued for 23 years, during which this thief stole 240 paintings from 172 art galleries, worth approximately $1.9 billion. So what exactly did he do with that screwdriver and antenna? And what was the theft method that made it take 23 years to catch him? And how was he finally caught? You'll be shocked to know. The story begins in March 1995, when a man named Stefan Breitwisser arrives in the Swiss town of Gries with his girlfriend Catherine, just for a trip. They decide to first visit a museum there, which had been converted from a castle and was known as the Château de Gries Museum. Since the museum was quite old and connected to European history, it had priceless antiques and paintings from the 13th to 15th centuries displayed throughout. This museum had large rooms and corridors, with paintings on every wall. Stefan and Catherine arrive at the museum and begin exploring. That's when Stefan's eyes stop at a particular painting. This painting was made by the German artist Christian Wilhelm Ernst Dietrich. It featured a woman whose eyes were painted in such a way that it felt like she was looking directly at you. Stefan was so impressed by this painting that he decided right then and there to steal it. Even though Stefan had never committed a theft before, after seeing this painting, only one thing was running through his mind: how to make it his. He talks to Catherine about stealing the painting. Surprisingly, Catherine neither stopped him nor refused. In fact, she very easily agreed to help him. Soon, they leave the museum and decide to come back the next day to carefully study every corner of the museum, so they would know all the ins and outs before committing the theft. The next day, they return and begin watching every room and corridor closely. It was a time when very few tourists were visiting, so most of the rooms and corridors were empty, and there were only 3 guards managing the entire museum. Since it was an old and small museum, there were no CCTV cameras, which turned out to be a huge advantage for Stefan. Now Stefan and Catherine begin the theft. Catherine stands near the corridor to alert Stefan if anyone is coming, while Stefan uses a screwdriver to remove the frame of the painting he liked. After removing the frame, he takes out the painting, rolls it up, puts it in a cover he had brought along, and hides it inside his long jacket. Now Stefan and Catherine have left the museum, and they had successfully stolen a painting very easily. And this is where Stefan's journey of theft begins, a journey that would make him Europe's biggest art thief. Since Stefan had a deep interest in art and paintings, stealing the first painting gave him a special feeling. He felt like he could fulfill his passion of collecting art this way. He started traveling to different countries across Europe, stealing paintings from small galleries and museums. In total, he stole 240 paintings from 172 art galleries. The most surprising part was that even after committing so many thefts, Stefan hadn't been caught. So what was it that kept the police from catching him every time? The most shocking thing was that his theft operations were very simple, just like the first one. Each time, Catherine would keep watch in the corridors, while Stefan used his screwdriver to remove the frames, take the paintings, hide them in his jacket, and they would leave. The reason he wasn't getting caught was that he always chose small museums and galleries for his thefts, places with very low security. He knew very well that if he tried this in large museums, where security was tight, he would get caught. In these small places, to avoid CCTV cameras, he used the antenna he carried with him to shift the camera angles, so he wouldn't appear on footage and could steal easily. Throughout all the thefts, he stayed very calm and confident, even talking to the people around with ease, which is why no one ever suspected him. Because of this confidence, he even pulled off thefts twice in the same gallery, using different disguises. These thefts became so famous across Europe that the New York Times covered the story, mentioning that the stolen artworks were worth $1.9 billion. Despite stealing art worth $1.9 billion, Stefan was living a very ordinary life, working as a waiter while his girlfriend Catherine worked as a nurse. He even lived in a small room in his mother's house. So why, after stealing so much, didn't he buy a house or live a lavish life? The reason was that Stefan had never sold a single painting. He didn't steal to sell. He stole because he was deeply passionate about art and collecting paintings. That was the reason his first theft happened, because he was mesmerized by the beauty of that painting and wanted it for himself. He had stolen so many paintings that every wall of his home was covered in art, worth $1.9 billion. Because he never sold a painting, it became nearly impossible for the police to trace him, since most thieves are caught while trying to sell stolen goods. Stefan's hobby of collecting paintings had now turned into an obsession. He wanted to own every famous painting in the world and kept stealing, never stopping to think about the consequences. And this obsession is what finally led him to make a mistake that changed his life forever. This time, he targeted a museum in Lausanne, Switzerland. Inside the museum, he and Catherine identified a painting to steal. As always, Catherine stood guard in the corridor, and Stefan. He opens the frame with a screwdriver, takes out the painting, rolls it up, and hides it inside his long jacket. After stealing it, both of them were just about to leave the museum gate when a guard notices Stephen and feels like he's trying to hide something inside his jacket. The moment the guard senses something suspicious, he quickly takes a round of the museum where he finds out that a painting is missing. He immediately runs toward the gate to catch Stephen and Catherine, but by then, both of them had already exited and were sitting in their car. Stephen was just starting his car when the guards surrounded him. Since the police station was nearby, there were already some police officers present, so Stephen surrenders quietly without any chaos. After keeping Stephen in the police station for one night, he is sent for trial the next day. This trial was very short because the painting Stephen had stolen was not of much value. Moreover, Stephen, crying in front of the judge, says that it was the first time in his life he had committed theft. He didn't intend to steal, but after seeing the painting, he lost control and stole it by mistake, for which he was very regretful. Since Stephen had no previous criminal record and he genuinely seemed remorseful, the judge released him in exchange for a small fine. However, he was also put under an 8-month supervision period during which he had to immediately leave Switzerland and could not return until the period was over. But this court trial had no effect on Stephen. He left Switzerland and continued committing thefts in other European countries. 4 years later, in 2001, Stephen felt that people had probably forgotten about the theft and court trial. He and his girlfriend Catherine returned to Lausanne, Switzerland, the same city where they had been caught earlier. But this time, they chose a different museum to rob. Stephen's eyes were not on a painting, but on an antique trumpet, which he easily stole and hid inside his jacket before leaving. After this theft, Stephen became overconfident and began to think that no one could catch him. The next day, he returned to the same museum from where he had stolen the trumpet. After entering, Catherine kept watch over the corridors and pathways, while Stephen was just about to hide a painting in his jacket when the museum guard surrounded him. This time, one particular guard played a key role in catching him. He had seen Stephen in the museum the previous day and recognized his face. The guard became suspicious that Stephen might have been the one who stole the antique trumpet. He asked his fellow guards to keep a hidden watch on Stephen so that they could catch him red-handed, and that's exactly what happened. After getting caught, Stephen was handed over to the police, where he tried his old trick again, telling them the theft was a mistake and he regretted it deeply. But since he had committed thefts on 2 consecutive days, the police rejected his claim and told him that a mistake happens once. These thefts were clearly pre-planned. The police began to dig into Stephen's criminal records and soon discovered the theft and trial that had occurred 4 years earlier. It didn't take them long to understand that they had a serial thief in their custody who had carried out several heists. Swiss police informed the French police, who then went to search Stephen's house. The French police believed that Stephen had hidden all the stolen paintings at home. The most shocking thing was that the police found absolutely nothing in Stephen's house, the same house whose walls had once been covered with paintings. So where did all the paintings go and who made them disappear? That remains a mystery. After Stephen's arrest, His girlfriend Catherine called his mother to inform her about it, and also told her to immediately hide all the paintings. To dispose of them, Stephen's mother began burning the paintings. Some were destroyed, and the rest she threw into a nearby canal. A few days later, people saw paintings floating in the canal and informed the museum authorities. When the authorities arrived and began retrieving them, they quickly realized that all the paintings were stolen, taken from various art galleries and museums across Europe. As soon as Swiss police got the news, they started interrogating Stephen strictly, and he eventually confessed to his crimes. He revealed all the thefts he had committed. After Stephen's confession, the police were stunned and shocked to learn how a single man had been stealing from museums and art galleries for years. Artworks worth $1.09 billion. What surprised the police the most was that Stephen had robbed more than 170 art galleries and was never caught. After the trial, the court sentenced Stephen to 3 years in prison and Catherine to 6 months for assisting him. Because Stephen's mother had destroyed valuable paintings, she was sentenced to 1.5 years. After being released from jail, Catherine left Stephen, saying she no longer wanted to be with him. Stephen's mother also never spoke to him again after the sentence. Stephen's life after jail became miserable. He had no money, no mother, no girlfriend, and he often stayed in depression. To earn some money, Stephen wrote a book about his life called Confession of an Art Thief, but it failed commercially due to poor sales. Eventually, Stephen decided to return to stealing, but this time not out of passion, for money. He planned to sell the stolen paintings to make a living. But as I told you before, most thieves get caught when they try to sell stolen items, and the same happened with Stephen. In 2011, he was arrested for the 3rd time while trying to sell stolen paintings. This time, the court sentenced him to 5 years in prison for repeat offenses and ordered that he be monitored for life. After serving 5 years, Stephen was released, but in 2019, he was arrested for the 4th time for selling stolen antique items on eBay. After this arrest, there's been no further trace of Stephen, but even today, he is remembered across Europe as history's biggest art thief, and no one since has managed to carry out such shocking thefts.